But hectic political activities have already been on for weeks. Meanwhile, new guidelines for social and digital media, as also OTT platforms, literally sent netizens into a tizzy. We have a special panel to discuss all that and much more. But first, what made news? Election Commission has given out the poll schedule for assembly elections in 4 states and the Union Territory of Puducherry. Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Puducherry will vote in one phase, while Assam will have 3 phases. West Bengal will go for a long-drawn 8-phased election. Results for all these elections are scheduled on the 2nd of May. As you may have seen, campaigning is already in full swing. After much deliberation, Government of India announced new guidelines for social media and OTT platforms. Rules have also been framed for the digital news media. The overarching philosophy as underlined by I&B Minister Prakash Javadekar is responsible freedom. To put it very briefly, intermediaries have to identify originators of mischievous content, appoint people to ensure laws of the land are followed, and take down objectionable content within a stipulated time frame. More on that in our next segment. India is all set to roll out the next phase of COVID vaccination from next week. Senior citizens 60 and above can avail of the drive. Also, persons above 45 with comorbidities. Besides, government, private hospitals will also administer the vaccines on a payment. Prime Minister Narendra Modi cautioned against politics of divide and rule while addressing an event in Pondicherry earlier this week. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi's uncharitable comments on voters of North India invited sharp reactions from political parties as well as common citizens countrywide. Electronic and digital media had some hot debates on the issue the entire week. We will come to that in our next segment. The world's largest cricket stadium is here. Rashtrapati Ramnath Kovind inaugurated the newly constructed, awe-inspiring Narendra Modi Cricket Stadium in Ahmedabad earlier this week. The stadium forms part of the massive Sardar Patel Sports Enclave, which has made the entire world sit up and take notice. So, after some of those headlines which dominated the media space through this week, it's time to understand some of those issues in a bit more detail. And for that, I have a very distinguished panel of guests here with me. Let me introduce my guests to you for the evening. I have with me here Professor Makarand Paranjpe, a well-known intellectual academic of the country, who is currently the director of the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies in Shimla. Welcome, Professor Paranjpe, to our show. We have shown your views earlier in Media Scan, but this is your first appearance on the show, and therefore a warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
I also have with me another very distinguished lady, well-known media space, media person of the country, and editor-in-chief of the Asia News International, Smita Prakash. Welcome, Smita Prakash, to Media Scan once more on our show.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Viewers, when Rahul Gandhi remarked during a program in Thiruvananthapuram earlier this week that he felt refreshed in South India as voters in the north were superficial, it sparked a huge row in the media. Not only did top politicians call him out, but even common citizens felt affronted. Of course, it was a hot media debate too. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also warned against such politics of divide and rule. So before I begin the discussion for this evening, let us listen in to what the Prime Minister had to say on this entire episode.
Our colonial rulers had the policy of divide and rule. Congress has a policy of divide, lie and rule. Sometimes their leaders put region against region. Sometimes they put community against community. They are gold, silver and bronze medal winners in telling lies.
So that was the Prime Minister trying to caution the country against the politics of divide and rule. Without wasting any more time on background, I want to come straight to my guests here. And let me first come to Smita Prakash. So Smita Prakash, I'd like to come to you first on this. And my very simple and straight question is that when politicians promote such north-south divide or any divide for that matter, we have heard east versus west also on earlier occasions. How do you look at this entire comment of Rahul Gandhi? Your take on the matter?
If I was to be kind, or if one was to be generous to Rahul Gandhi, it would be that maybe he was making just an observation or a flippant remark or trying to flatter his audience, which happens often with leaders, especially during election time.
Right, right.
But the fact is that, you know, it is true that there is a north-south divide. There is a north-northeast divide. There are caste divides. There are religious divisions which exist in our country. These are fissures which are there. Now, should a leader highlight that, or should a leader
exactly what I wanted to ask? You see, we cannot deny there are feelings and prejudices among the common people. But aren't politicians supposed to forego these things to promote greater unity and harmony? What do you say?
I agree with you that the goal of a politician should be to heal, to unite and practice inclusive politics. Which is why I'm saying that, either the media, we saw too much into a light statement, or it does exist within him, because he did mention about Gujarati traders when he went into the Northeast. He talked about the language issue in Tamil Nadu. He speaks about it in Kerala when he talks about people being, having depth of understanding. These are things which you say in living rooms when you're chatting with your friends, and, over a cup of coffee, you just generally talk. But you don't expect it out of a leader while making a public speech, knowing fully well that it is going to go not just to his audience who is sitting in front of him, but across the country.
Correct, absolutely. Let me also get a perspective from Professor Paranjpe here. Professor Paranjpe, you being an academic, an analyst, a person more into reading and writing and understanding things, we expect a deeper sort of a discussion from you, sir, regarding, these fissures that Smita Prakash has just highlighted. We do have fissures in our society. There's no point denying them. It could be on caste basis, on religion, on communities, and of course the regional imbalances and prejudices. However, when a politician highlights these issues, even if it is, playing to the gallery, to please the crowd that he is addressing to, do you think it affects the overall politics of the country? I mean, is it really serious, or is it like Smita Prakash said, we do discuss these things casually, so why not in a political meeting?
I want to approach this question slightly differently from what Smita ji just said.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure that the word divide or fissure is accurate. There are differences, and we celebrate these differences. Like we say that in a garden, there are many flowers. That's a cliche. Otherwise, you'll have monoculture. The real point is that is the kind of politics, the kind of public debate, the ideologies that prevail in a society or even dominate a society, which turn a difference into a divide. So that is why the question that you raised becomes important, which is what kind of politics do we really endorse? Now here, once again, as academics or commentators or media people, what can we say to our politicians? Because they want to win. They are going to say whatever they think is going to get them votes. So if it is divide and rule, as the question that you raised was, or whether it is identitarian politics, whether it's going to be language, caste, community, region-based, vote bank politics, they're going to try it. But here's the thing that I'm trying to say, which is that we can no longer talk about divide and rule. It's actually divide and lose, because there's a sea change. There's a sea change in the Indian polity today, which is that divisive politics simply doesn't have purchase anymore. People are not really voting for people or candidates who who are playing that card. So,
But sir,
what
I'll
I
come
really
back
want
to you. We may have two views on that divide and lose as you define it. Let me come back to
Correct.
Smita Prakash on one very quick query, and then I'll come back to you. Smita Prakash, since this is Media Scan, I want you to really tell us very candidly and honestly, isn't it true that while we are very quick to slam politicians, I'm not just talking of Rahul Gandhi, all regional leaders, etc., we in the media, when we discuss the issues, we are very quick and prompt to slam them or call them out. But doesn't the media in its own way, the national media, the regional, English, other languages, don't we also, in a way, we also promote these differences and thus create a kind of feeling among people, sometimes on language, on region, on various issues. It just goes on. Is the media also a player or a culprit in the entire scenario?
Oh, absolutely. I'm the first person to say it's true. It's 100% true in what you're saying, because, well, we're all a product of all these, the good professor says they're not divisions, but I beg to differ, because I think they are divisions. I'm a South Indian who lives in the north, and when we came in, my father was in a, I'm sorry, I'm getting into a personal thing, but just to give you an example, because when we were posted to the north and we came to the north, and it was fascinating, and it was sometimes one felt dejected that people in the north just didn't know about the south. And though we came from Bombay to Delhi, in spite of that, there was people didn't even know that Marathi and Gujarati are two separate languages in my neighborhood.
Correct.
And
no, I completely agree on you with you on that, Smita Prakash, because I've seen these prejudices play out, very inadvertently actually. People might not even have intended to hurt, but it does. My very quick query to you is, how can the media help in, removing these prejudices from people's mind? Because, forget about aggravating, the media should play a constructive role, to make people feel one.
Yes, one I think is in actual terms is like, as an editor, hire people from different parts of the country,
right.
Make your newsroom which is representative. See, we all became conscious of the gender divide in our newsrooms way back about 15-20 years back, and people were hiring women in the newsroom, women reporters. I think it is necessary to hire people who speak other languages than just Hindi in our newsrooms, because most of the television newsrooms are based in Delhi. Doordarshan is based mainly in Delhi. So hire more people, be more responsive to accents, be more responsive to cultures. So, frankly, if you go to your newsroom and ask people how many states in the Northeast, you'll be surprised. Not many people who've done bachelor's and master's in journalism who will know how many states in the Northeast, what are the capitals, and what is the language spoken.
Yes, sadly, but it may please you to know, Smita Prakash,
which are the states which are going to elections in South India, which are the areas, what is the languages in South India, you'll be surprised not many know.
So, it will please you to know, Smita Prakash, that the Doordarshan newsroom is perhaps one of the most representative newsrooms in the country, if that is what is important, as you say. But apart from that, apart from awareness of the country, a representative newsroom, we also need to take care of how we write our stories, how we treat the subject. However, let me come back to Professor Paranjpe on what he was trying to highlight just earlier. Professor Paranjpe, you were underscoring this idea of divide and lose. Let me be the devil's advocate. My query to you is, isn't it true that we may see an aberration in one election or other, but people by and large are still tending to vote for narrow interests and identity politics, and any party which tries to tide over this kind of politics has a very challenging task. What is your perspective?
I'll put it differently. You see, the people of India are very smart, and obviously there are regional issues, local issues, which are very important in any election. But I think what they want to find out is whether there is a party or a leader or a group of people who have a wider vision for the nation. And when they do, they will vote for this unity, or what I would call, ekatmata ki politics, Rajniti. But when they find that the central party or the national party or the leaders lack a vision, then they will vote for local issues. Then the entire election will be dominated, by community, language, and so forth. So the real point is, have national parties or leaders been able to articulate a broader vision? And
Correct.
what you said was not always the case. I mean, look at the first decades after independence. People did not vote on narrow lines, like you mentioned. In fact, many of the local parties, regional parties splintered out later. It's when that unitive, cohesive, and visionary politics fails, then there's a splintering. And I would
I think
call it
that's a very interesting point, Professor. When we started out as a fledgling democracy, the people were not looking at these narrow identity issues to vote. It was somewhere, in the interregnum, in the middle decade, 70s, 80s perhaps, when too much of identity politics started overriding national and other concerns. But I do get your point that local development and local politics does not mean divisive. I mean, these are two very different things, aren't they?
If you give me a minute, I'll try to finish my point.
Ji.
I'm really trying to say there's
Please
a
go.
dialectical process at work. There are times when the nation is enthused by a bigger cause, and then there are times of disillusionment when people lose faith. There's a trust deficit, and there's a splintering that goes on. And to some extent, that splintering, localization, etc., is also a form of mobilization, which we shouldn't dismiss. It also produces some good. So let's look at it, from a longer perspective, and then we'll see how this plays out. And the final point I want to make is that, you didn't ask me this question, but as an observer, let me tell you that when we talk about, ideology or slogans, or when we talk about, something, that is really big that has happened in the Indian polity, I would call it the politics of Hindutva. Now, this politics of Hindutva has completely changed how politics in India works, because it has created a vote bank whose potential is not just the 80% of people who are supposedly Hindu in this country, but even a chunk of the remaining 20%. So this is an ever-expanding domain if it can be harnessed properly. So it's really taking vote bank politics to a different level and different degree.
I understand, sir, but perhaps I guess this is a much wider discussion, and we'll have to maybe devote another weekend of Media Scan to this, distinctly dedicated to this subject. However, I must apologize that I have to move on to the next subject on the table, which relates directly to the media also. So I'll come back to you on that one of these evenings, and we can discuss this more in depth. Viewers, once again, the Western media has displayed a lopsided, partial, and may I say, an ill-informed portrayal of Indian democracy and politics. Despite being called out for their treatment by our intellectuals and citizens, they continue to do so. I would particularly like to discuss today a Washington Post article published earlier this week. But meanwhile, the government has come out with new guidelines for social media, digital platforms, and also other OTT platforms, precisely to address these problems which we have been seeing raising its head again and again, and stressing the people on responsible freedom. The government had to come out with these guidelines this week. Let's first hear the Information and Broadcasting Minister, Prakash Javadekar, how he explained the new guidelines, and then I'll come to my guests on this entire gamut of issues, the treatment of Western media as well as the new guidelines.
मीडिया की आजादी लोकतंत्र का आत्मा है. Both we have fought for maintaining press freedom and have gone to jail during emergency. But let me also tell you that every freedom has to be responsible freedom.
Smita Prakash, before I come to the new guidelines on the social media and OTT, I have here with me this opinion article published in the Washington Post earlier this week, which says India's title of democracy is in question. And then in various paragraphs, it goes on to say that India is at a stage when it has to forego its claims of being a democracy. It says, I mean, it goes to the extent of saying that all our fundamental rights and our the constitutional guarantees are almost suspended. And it says we are in a kind of a situation which could be worse or at least like the infamous emergency of the early 70s. Before going into the various aspects of this situation, this is not the first time we are seeing the Western media write these things. How do you look at the Western media's treatment of India's democracy and our politics?
Well, Smita, when I was a younger journalist and I used to read these articles, these kind of articles, my blood used to boil. I used to get really, really angry.
But not anymore?
Well, now I would just be flippant and say, like, I think the reporter, since it's a Washington Post article, they can just go jump into the Potomac River as far as I'm concerned. I don't care what they think about my country. That's, of course, being a light-hearted comment, but it does bother. Of course it does. You know, quite naturally, we want the world to accept us as a thriving democracy, a huge democracy, where all our all the functions of which should happen in a democracy do happen. So this is a regular thing that the foreign media writes about, and I don't think we should hassle ourselves too much with it.
But yes, before I move on to Professor Paranjpe, you know, I mean, how do you think a common Indian citizen should take them? I mean, should they take them really seriously and worry about what's happening in our country? Should they just let it be? What is the most workable way out?
No, yes. I think what is necessary is that we should get our systems in place, right? We should ensure that, you know, we have a good democracy in place, our thriving executive, legislature, judiciary, and our media. Once we are sure about ourselves, what the foreign media says about us should not hassle us all that much. They don't care what we say about them. It doesn't matter at all. But yes,
point taken.
At some point of time, Smita, it's necessary for our bureaucrats also to stop asking or looking for some kind of a, you know, a good chit and that star, you know, which students get from their teachers. They should just stop bothering and stop staping foreign journalists who are in India.
Point taken, point taken. Let me come to Professor Paranjpe on that. Professor, you just heard Smita Prakash very clearly say that our concern and priority should be that our democracy must be thriving, our institutions must be robust, and we have to care about our country, our people. If that is the case, it doesn't matter what the Western media writes, because they are not like the teachers who have to give us the stars in our copybook. Do you agree?
Yeah, I completely agree. But I would like to read these media reports symptomatically. In other words, not for what they say, but as symptomatic of a deeper, wider malaise. You see, these things are not innocent, and it's not just the Western media. There are foreign-based Indian academics of repute who are writing along the same lines. And there are reports and op-eds from, you know, Singapore, Hong Kong, all over the world, Europe, UK, which are singing the same tune, because we're going to come up soon for a democracy index evaluation by two major world organizations. And this is a way to embarrass and pressurize us. So, you know, I don't think these things are innocent. There are networks of influence, there are lobbies, and these are all working.
I have a query here. And you know, it's all right to say that we need not bother about what they are writing, wo jo chahe likh sakte hain. But the fact remains that first of all, you know, when there is an entire narrative being built up by those lobbies and forces, as you mentioned, and other vested interests perhaps, my point is all this narrative together, it does have a bearing on international agencies, on the world opinion. Somewhere down the line, when we want to make our standing in the global system, it does affect our dealing with the rest of the world, you know, when it goes beyond a point. That is my first concern. My second query is, these Western powers haven't really covered themselves in glory when it comes to democracy. We have been seeing what's happening in their own countries. So how should India deal with these things? How do we go about it? What is the best way?
My point is, there's a war going on out there.
Okay.
Not just bullets, okay, and missiles, but there's a war of words, there's a war of narratives. There are different interests. I was just reading this book called The Unending Game by our former RAW chief, Mr. Vikram Sood.
Yes.
And he lays bare the nexus between all kinds of forces. I mean, we know, I don't want to name these networks, which are at work. There's a billionaire, European billionaire, he's investing in this. There's another network which begins with Om. I won't complete the word. There's an network. There are so many people who are funding these so-called independent media houses.
So therefore, my question, what do we do about it?
Well, I don't think the government is sleeping. There are very smart people. They're creating counter narratives.
Yes.
And, if you attend a bunch of meetings, you'll see that there is, a sort of very concerted attempt to monitor these and take remedial measures. So to finish, to answer your question, I think we have to work at various levels as individuals who have a conscience, who have points of view, and who believe in Swaraj ideas. We work as individuals. We don't have.
No, but they are not going to publish. When Indians want to put forth our way of thinking, our viewpoint, they refuse to publish. They always give platform to a certain set of people. Do you agree?
That's why I'm saying you start at the individual level, then you build your own networks, and finally, you should have your own platforms. And we've seen that happening. We've got very, very powerful platforms. ANI is a wonderful platform. Congratulations. I've been following you from the start. And, when your father-in-law started it and all that, I happened to meet him. So, there's Swaraja, there's Open, there's so many platforms. So,
point
it's competitive.
Taken, sir. So what you are trying to focus is, building our own platforms which can give proper space to our viewpoint is perhaps the only way to counter the narrative. However, I'm afraid we've had a very fulfilling and interesting discussion, but then I'm now completely running out of time. So I'll put a quick question to Smita Prakash here. Smita Prakash, I do not want to ask anything on a specific provision, but broadly, did you check the guidelines for the social media and OTT platforms, also digital news platforms? How do you look at them? Was it necessary? Was it unnecessary? Is it enough? Not enough?
It's absolutely necessary. We've been discussing for a long time, Smita, where we talked about guidelines. I do believe in freedoms. As a journalist, I want more and more freedom. But that's motherhood and apple pie. That's a different thing altogether. But yes, regulations is necessary as far as the social media is concerned. And all that the minister said, I totally agree that these regulations, some of it we need to bring it on our own, and some need to be there. I totally agree with that. And as another small point, I completely am on board with what the professor said about narratives and how counter narratives are absolutely necessary.
Yes.
And the fact is that there is a concerted effort to negate the narrative coming out of India. There is no one narrative coming out of India because it's a democracy, and we love the idea that there are several voices that come out and none of the voices are curtailed and pushed down. The fact is that we are battling a serious effort to push us down, and it's up to us as Indians. Need not speak in one voice, one sentence, one voice, one medium. But the fact that our voices are heard is something that should be seen as a national duty.
Right. And thank you so much for bringing that point. Because, we cannot run down any viewpoint. We have to give space for everybody. You cannot make your platform unifocus. However, I just have time enough for a very quick remark from Professor Paranjpe before I wind up. Professor, Smita Prakash talked about the need for regulation, even though every journalist wants complete freedom to write and visualize. However, we know that social media intermediaries have also been trying to play a game, in this narrative war. Do you think the new guidelines will help in ensuring responsible freedom, as the minister said?
Absolutely. I believe that. In fact, there are three stakeholders here.
Yes.
Digital news organizations, social media, which doubles as entertainment, news, misinformation, whatever, and OTT. And I've read the entire document, and I think it differentiates between these in a very, nuanced way. But the most important thing to remember is that these organizations are not here to promote freedom of expression. They're here to make money. And their combined viewership is over 500, 600 million people. India is their largest market because in China, they can't operate. So obviously, regulations, answerability, accountability, and guidelines are absolutely essential. And only in the odd emergency is the secretary, IMB, allowed to take down content. Only in emergency. Only if
Yes,
really
it's not like we are curbing expression at any stage. However, since I've completely run out of time, I must stop you, sir, at this point. And as I promised, we may come back to the discussion one of these weekends, particularly on some of the issues that you have raised today. Viewers, after that very enlightening and very interesting discussion, I'm afraid I must wind up our show for this evening. But before that, I want to thank profusely my guests here, Professor Makarand Paranjpe, who took the time out on a weekend to explain to us the subject so well, and Smita Prakash, a friend and always ready to join our show. Thank you very much, Professor Paranjpe, Smita Prakash, and see you one of these weekends again. Viewers, with that, it's time to say goodbye on Media Scan. But do keep watching DD India as we continue to scan the media for you. Good night.
हाय मॉम, फिर से शॉपिंग? बाबूजी, आपने इसे बिगाड़ के रखा।